Monday, September 15th, 2008, after one of the most tumultuous weekends in Wall Street's history, investors awoke to a rapidly escalating financial crisis, the likes of which had not been seen since the Great Depression. The Dow dropped more than 500 points. Merrill Lynch had sold itself to Bank of America, and Lehman Brothers, one of the nation's oldest investment banks, filed for bankruptcy.
This is going to be one of the watershed days in financial markets history.
It was a manic Monday in the financial markets. The Dow tumbled more than 500 points after two pillars of the street tumbled over the weekend. Lehman Brothers, a 158-year-old firm, filed for bankruptcy.
I don't think anyone really expected a bank as big as Lehman to be in the position that it's in now.
Brought down by bad mortgage investments, Lehman, which has 25,000 employees, will be liquidated.
As it got to be about 2 to 3 weeks before, we really knew that it was inevitable, just because we would notice market factors happening. People wouldn't trade with us because they perceived us as a counterparty being too risky. And so when that started happening, then it definitely, you can't get around that.
The bankruptcy didn't happen overnight, so this was an evolving situation. Most people think of the financial crisis is really happening kind of in the fall of 2008, but it really started with Bear Stearns.
In December 2007, the investment bank and brokerage firm Bear Stearns posted an $854 million loss on massive mortgage-related write-downs. It was the first quarterly loss in the company's 85-year history, and its downward spiral continued from there.
It's the mortgage meltdown's biggest casualty yet. Investment bank Bear Stearns to be taken over by rival J.P. Morgan Chase.
The following March, Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke and U.S. Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson stepped in.
The price for Wall Street's fifth biggest bank, a mere $2 a share, in a deal backed by the Fed and the Bush administration.
The Friday before Lehman would ultimately go under, its top executive, Richard Full, and many of its 25,000 employees held out hope the government would again step in to save the day.
We assumed that everything was going to work out, that there would be a solution, because our instincts were that, we weren't going to fail, right? That nobody would let that happen. The ramifications were too great.
But Bernanke and Paulson felt they had already gone too far in bailing out the country's financial system. This time, they said, there would be no government assistance.
I never once considered that it was appropriate to put taxpayer money on the line in resolving Lehman Brothers.
Throughout the rest of the weekend, with no government backing, Lehman Brothers scrambled to find a buyer, focusing on Barclays, the UK-based bank, and Bank of America. But the latter pulled out of talks after the government would not agree to take on losses from Lehman's most troubled real estate assets, something it had done for Bear Stearns. Lehman Brothers was officially out of options.
I remember I was watching the screen on Bloomberg. I was watching the news, and that's where, funny enough, is we got all our news was on TV and on Bloomberg, the news feed. So it's not like we got internal emails.
It's been craziness here at the Lehman Brothers headquarters in New York. Police have set up barricades, and there's nearly 100 reporters and cameramen all camped out here waiting for some type of answer on this wounded financial giant. Many are wondering what will happen to the 25,000 employees.
Everybody just, we can't believe it.
It's just a surprise. Everything goes really quickly.
It was really a truly fascinating kind of 24 hours. Faced with seeing people, watching people streaming out of the New York headquarters, I decided to go downtown. I live in the suburbs of Chicago, and pack up our offices, because we had been told by one of our managers in New York that there was so much uncertainty that nobody knew whether the building would even be open. Our offices would be open on Monday.
Merrill Lynch, fearing it could be next, agreed in an act of desperation to a shotgun marriage with Bank of America. Merrill, the country's biggest brokerage with 60,000 employees, had been battered by nearly $50 billion in mortgage-related losses. So in just 6 months, 3 of the 5 biggest independent firms on Wall Street have now disappeared. Bear Stearns, which collapsed last spring, Lehman Brothers, and Merrill Lynch.
Big kind of hole in the stomach kind of feeling, we're feeling like everything's dropping out because we just assumed things would get resolved. And when that didn't come together, there was a feeling of I don't know what this means, and I don't know what it means for me tomorrow and the day after.
In Washington, the head of Lehman Brothers was under fire today on Capitol Hill.
I feel horrible about what has happened to the company.
Richard Foltz, chief executive of Lehman Brothers, was asked how he could personally pocket more than $300 million in the 8 years leading up to Lehman's bankruptcy.
Is that fair for the CEO of a company that's now bankrupt to have made that kind of money? It's just unimaginable to so many people.
And how, asked lawmakers, could Lehman spend $10 billion in bonuses and stock buybacks when its business was spiraling downward? Folt asked for no pity, but showed his own anger when asked about Lehman's bankruptcy. Why, lawmakers wanted to know, did the Bush administration allow Lehman to fail when Bear Stearns, AIG, and others all got government lifelines?
Until the day they put me in the ground,
Exactly.
I will wonder.
I actually probably was not as angry as other people. I think a lot of people made it a very personal thing with him, and I never really felt that way. I look at our board, I view it as a failure of the board versus, for not stepping in, but I never really got angry. Life's too short, kind of, don't see what good it does to anybody to dwell and focus, and I'm more of a forward-looking person, so not dwelling.
No matter how much money you might make now, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Learn the lessons that Lehman did. Don't borrow too much. Don't over-leverage yourself. And that's why this whole thing happened, is people over-leveraging and taking on a lot more debt. And hey, when the market's good, you can afford these payments. But what about when the market goes bad? So I learned from those experiences, and I'm happy where I am now.
Still to come. We turn back the lens of time to when the clash between the world's